we've lacked an effective solution to the Jewish singles crisis because we've only considered part of the problem. Let's get clear on what needs solving so we can finally make the difference needed. Coming up now on Solving Jewish Singleness with a therapist that gets it, Liz Wallenstein. So we're back to Solving Singleness with a therapist that gets it. In the first episode, we established that there's an overemphasis on the factors that singles can control in order to get themselves married, and that there's not enough of an acknowledgement that there's also factors that are not within their control. And that if we're going to effectively solve this problem, both need to be recognized and addressed. So we need to stop all this blaming the singles for their circumstances and realizing there's just so much they can do, unless, of course, we start talking more about how they can handle the things that are not within their control. And maybe right now that sounds like it doesn't make sense, but keep listening and it will make sense. So we are going to talk about what those factors are that they can control and what those factors are that they can't and how. But before we can do that, we need to establish, what is this problem of singleness? What makes it a problem? There's these terms being thrown around: singles crisis or shidduch crisis, referring to the Jewish or Yiddish term. And what makes it a crisis? Or what I like to call this is what most people don't get about singles and singleness, and need to if we're going to figure this thing out. And this isn't just for the non-singles. I think that even the single people, you'll know more firsthand this information that I'm going to talk about today, but I think even for single people, I may touch on some things today that you didn't even realize is contributing to your struggle and your frustration and your confusion with this process. So let's dive in. So let's start with the obvious. What makes this a crisis? I think that most people focus on the numbers. So I don't think there are statistics about this out there. It's at least hundreds, but I would guess even thousands if we look at the large communities of singles, let's say even within Manhattan, the Upper West Side, Washington Heights. But then globally, think Israel, there's also very large singles communities, and those are just the very well-known, very large communities. But there's Jewish singles everywhere who are saying they want to be married and they can't find somebody. So the numbers in itself is part of the crisis, in that it doesn't make sense. All these people say that they want to find somebody, yet they can't find somebody within each other, because as we established in episode 1, exposure is no longer a problem. Exposure is well taken care of. So that's definitely part of the crisis. But I think that most people end there and they don't realize there's so many other significant factors that make this a problem. So the next thing is, there's a lot of misconceptions out there about single people, right? Some people say, oh, they're having too much fun to settle down. Or they talk about the commitment phobe, and that's why they're not. But most people don't recognize that a lot of these single people are really suffering and struggling. They're trying really hard. They're giving it everything they've got, and it could be for a long period of time, and they're not seeing results. It's not that they're having too much fun or too busy with their careers all the time. Obviously, there's people out there like that too, but a lot of the people that we're referring to when we talk about this crisis are not that. And even that person that you might be calling the commitment phobe, or you might be saying is picky, oftentimes, almost all the times, there's a lot of pain and fear underneath that. So we need to be more fair, more compassionate, more understanding of what's going on for these people. Also, call singleness by its actual term. It's an epidemic of loneliness. The loneliness of being a single person can be profound. The struggling to find the Shabbat or weekend plans every week, the coming home to an empty home at night after your day of work, or to roommates that are not family, that going to the events and coming home afterwards and not being able to say that you found somebody, even though there was all those people that you talked to, making your friends family, which is great, but there's still a sense of loneliness of there not being family. I mean, the list goes on and on. The loneliness that these people experience can be really profound. It's a tremendous pain for them. And that in itself, even without all the other factors, I think makes this a crisis and a major problem. That I want to cover is singles becoming battle weary. So if you're working hard about this, if you care a lot, if you're giving it all by getting yourself out there as much as you can and stretching yourself out of your comfort zone to see if that will make a difference, and working on yourself and taking an honest look at your issues, and especially the longer that goes on, you can become battle weary. And what I mean by that is you become emotionally and even physically exhausted. Um, it can start chipping away at your self-esteem. You can start questioning yourself and just become a lot more unsure of yourself. It can start taking away from your dignity. You can start compromising your values, all because you can't make sense of it. You're confused. So you're trying to find ways to cope, and you're just desperate to find that thing that's going to work. And what a shame if people start out strong and relatively happy and in a good place, and they start to waste away or lose the best of themselves because of this process. I mean, losing your hope, losing your idealism, losing your positivity. This happens so often, and it's such a shame. And the next thing I want to look at is life on pause. That, if this was the thing that you wanted to move on to in your life, was to be married and kids and everything else, and you can't make that happen, you could feel like you're just stuck, like your life is on pause, and you just gotta find ways to kind of, pass the time or make a life for yourself, and maybe you'll do really positive things in that place, but it's still just trying to make something happen in place of what you really want to be happening. And what can make that problem worse is you look at the people around you who didn't have this problem, who got married basically when they wanted to and had their children, and now are buying their house and settling in a community and developing personally in ways because their life keeps evolving. And you see this kind of momentum to their life. You see that time passes, but it feels productive. And for you, the same time is passing, but it may not feel productive. It may not have that momentum. You might feel really stuck and still, and that can lead to, a lot of sadness and frustration and despair. The other thing I want to look at is the ways that singles feel like they can't be successful at the values and ideals of their culture. So especially if you're in the religious world, or even just traditional, or that's just the norm of the society that you're from or that you want to be in, is at a certain point in your life to be married and to have a family and to contribute to society from that place. And you just can't do it. You tried and you just can't get there. Then you feel like a failure. And it can also lead to feelings of embarrassment, because often you feel like people don't get it. People don't understand it, because nobody knows how to make sense of it, especially if they're not in it. And then, you worry that people are judging you. You worry that people think that you're inferior or defective in some way. It just feels embarrassing. And that's why it tends to make people kind of isolate or alienate themselves, or just stick around people who are going through the same thing as them, and kind of take themselves out of the societies and groups that they were part of before that were rewarding for them, because they're embarrassed and they don't know how to explain the lack of success that they've had versus the other people who it kind of seems effortlessly that they had that success. And the other problem of that is that people who might identify as religious, or even if it's just cultural, feel like they're forced to embrace the values and lifestyles of a more secular culture, because they have no choice. They are not able to live up to the values and lifestyles that religion would say is ideal for that stage of life. And so what's left for them? So they find themselves embracing the values of a more secular culture and lifestyle, because that's more about developing yourself on your own. And there could be some good things about that, but especially if you care about religion and religious life, you're moving farther away from that. You're creating more obstacles to you having that one day, because you feel like you have no choice. And then there's just two more factors that I want to touch on. And I think that these are the factors that get the least amount of attention. These are the factors that even singles themselves may not realize is contributing to their issue, but I think could be amongst the most significant factors. As a therapist that works with singles in my practice, I can never guarantee marriage. I'm very honest that I can't control it to the same degree that they can't control it. I see my job as just maximizing their chances, and also offering support and understanding, and that they should feel valued by me and respected by me. But one of the number one things I'm looking to address, because I feel it from them so profoundly, is the powerlessness. Joy in life comes from having a sense of power over our own lives, of being able to say, I have this goal, I have this dream, I have this desire, and there are things that I can do to make that a part of my life. There are things that I can do to work towards that. And so if you have that before, and you've tried to work towards it, and you believed that you could, but then it feels like it keeps being held from you, that you can't accomplish it, that you can't have it. You realize you're not in control. You can't give that to yourself. It could lead to a sense of powerlessness, that I don't have a sense of power over my own life. I kind of just have to deal with whatever's handed to me. And look, in life, there is that element, but if you totally lose that sense of, I can go for what's important to me, I can acquire or accomplish the things in life that I really value, then that's what leads to the depression. That's what leads to the despair. That's what leads to the hopelessness that gets a lot of these singles to that really troubling point. So if we're going to solve singleness, it's not just about how do we get these people married, but it's how do we give these people hope and positivity and happiness and themselves back by helping them to feel a sense of power over their own lives. And I think kind of connected to this, but also, a really important point is that, and this is something that I was kind of, is kind of my thing that I keep coming back to, and I definitely established the case for this in episode 1, is that we need to acknowledge that this whole thing that's happening with singles, it doesn't make sense. It defies any logic and any rationale. And I think this is what makes me different from a lot of the other people who work with this or speak out about it, is I think a lot of people keep saying, this is what we need to do, this is what's wrong, this is what we have to go for. And I'm very much about, there's just so much we can do. There's definitely things we can do, but we need to acknowledge there are things that we can't. And we will never be effective in making a difference in this problem if we don't look at that part. So going back again to doesn't make sense. Part of the singles crisis is that this is a relatively new phenomenon. It's been this way for the past bunch of years, but that's it. Before this, there wasn't anything like this. People were much more easily be able to find other people to marry. To have this many people saying, I want to be married and I can't, is unprecedented. And nobody's been able to find that one reason of why this is and fix it, right? That's why I have to come up with this series, is another person trying to do that. But we haven't yet. So my big thing is that we need to have that acknowledgement if it doesn't make sense. Because what I hear of is, and it's really coming, I'm sorry, but from an ignorant place, that people point out one group and say, this is the thing they're doing wrong and this is why it's happening to them. But the reason why that's ignorance is, if you step back and really look at this, this is not happening to only one group. It's happening to all different people across the spectrum, from different backgrounds, different religious levels, different cultural backgrounds, different ages. So, people will look at the right wing and say, well, it's because there's too much separation between the sexes. They're not comfortable with each other. They're not meeting each other. And that's why they're having this problem. But then you look at the left wing and they say, the men and women are too comfortable with each other. There's too much casual relationships. The whole why buy the cow if you can get the milk for free, and things like that. And that's why it's not happening for them. But there needs to be an acknowledgement that this is actually happening for everybody across the spectrum, no matter what their background, no matter what their religious level, no matter what their lifestyle now or growing up. This is a problem across the spectrum. It's also a problem across the age spectrum. I see people still in their early 20s who have a lot of pain over this. It's obviously not coming from the amount of time, but it's coming from this doesn't make sense. I can't make sense of this. Why is it so hard to find success in this area? Is there something wrong with me? Is there something that I'm doing wrong? Am I unlucky? Whatever it is that struggle of, it doesn't seem like there's anything that I can do about this, and I can't make sense of it. And what I'm saying is the same stuff that I'll hear people in their 20s and 30s tell me, or the same experiences that they're having, or the same frustrating dynamics that they're running into, I will literally hear also from people in their 60s, pushing 70. This really is not age specific. This is happening to every age group that needs to be acknowledged in this question of like, what is going on here? Why does this make sense? I happen to think, if you're familiar with the Israeli TV show Shtisel, that had a lot of popularity and exemplifies this problem in a great way. The main character, is in his 20s and is struggling with singleness and dating and trying to find that person to marry. And he's Hasidic. But, we see all these problems that he's running into, and it's not smooth. But then we also see it happening to his widowed father, who presumably is in his 60s, is also, and the women in his life, the different struggles that they're having, and the different walls they're running up against, the different obstacles that they're having. It didn't matter which age group they were in. It didn't matter that they were Hasidic, which has a huge emphasis on getting married, and it doesn't take much to get married. They're having this struggle. So I think that was just a great cultural depiction of that. Wrapping up, why am I doing this series? Why am I putting myself out there in order to try and help people as much as I can who are going through this? And I've talked before about, my own personal experiences motivating this. But the thing that I think I bring to this that's different from what I've been seeing around, and the perspective that I hope feels refreshing, is that when a single person tells me it would take a miracle for me to get married, I believe them. I mean, I look around at how things are going, and I do believe it takes a miracle. What we're essentially saying is we've got to make something that doesn't make sense work anyway. We've got to beat the odds. But I don't think that's a problem. And the reason is, I know I did it, and I know other people who did it. We got married and it felt like a miracle. Miracles do happen. We felt like we defied the odds. We felt like, and I'll go more into this another time, but when it least made sense, that's when it happened. It doesn't have to make sense. So I think a lot of people out there keep trying to find this cause and kind of beat it to death of like, this is the reason why, and this is what we have to do. And I think you're already picking up on my messages. There are things we need to do and get better at, but there are also things that we can't control, but that doesn't have to be bad news. It's just about how do we respond to things that aren't in our control? Because if we want to be successful under circumstances that don't make sense and defy logic, and in a time where it just feels really chaotic around this, we've got to find another way. But I feel like I found it. It's worked for me. I've seen it work for others. And so stay tuned to this series because I'm going to share it with you. And thanks for sticking with me so far about this. And I hope it's been valuable. If you thought this recording was helpful, please share it on social media so that it gets to more people that it can help. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video. If you're interested in therapy sessions with me online, please contact me through my website or my email or social media. Feel free to send me questions and suggestions of what you'd like to hear me talk about through social media or my website, lizwallensteintherapy.com. Best of luck to you on your journey. I hope to hear good news soon.